Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 out today. Got another account overview for you guys. So, what we're going to do is jump into all of my units. I'm going to show you their gear, I'm going to show you their stats, and I'm going to explain just very briefly how I use them in the RTA season or elsewhere in the game. So, we're going to jump right into it without any further ado. If you want some timestamps, there should be some in the pinned comments and the description down below. But we have Abigail to start things off. She actually was used quite a bit in the first half of the season. Used her into Midnight God Lilias, for example, is kind of nice. But other than that, she's kind of not been doing too much. Sometimes I do use her as like a anti-cleave type of unit, so that's why she's on Proof of Valor, to make sure she stays alive to protect the unit in the back line. She's on a defense break EE, obviously, because she wants more utility with her. She sets up with this speed for a pretty decent amount of kills. You can defense break somebody and then your DPS comes after to clean up. Next up, we got Ed. I didn't really use Ed this season. It's not really too many situations where you can use him against like heavy debuff teams. He's good against things like Solitaria, decent against stuff like DDR sometimes, but he can get overwhelmed with debuffs, so do be careful with units like DDR who have non-attack skills for debuffs. But yeah, otherwise, Ed, he's okay. I might change up his build. Like, between him and Abigail, I did want to change one of them to injury. Next up, we have Hwayoung. So she's on a speed and torrent build. She actually underperformed for me in this last season. I probably just wasn't drafting her correctly, or I just need a better build, but she keeps getting controlled. I don't have the means. Maybe with draft protection it'll be different now, but she kept getting controlled by things like DDR, things like Solitaria, anything that can stun well, and she never took her turns that she needed. She is on Ubir's Tooth, which works out quite nicely, especially with her changes to do more splash damage if you Soulburn her S1, but yeah, I just feel like I need to be more conscious when I'm drafting her. She can't really just be splashed in and just deal like 1v4 with a bunch of units. Speaking of 1v4 units, we have Fire Ravi here with her latest balance changes. So we have her on pen set and counter set, and she is a incredible unit. It's like either Fire Ravi or A Ravi. One of them has to be in the meta, according to Smilegate. And this time it's Fire Ravi's time to shine. So Sigurd's Scythe on her, only plus 15. My plus 30 is on Seaside Bellona, and I still don't want to take it off of her. She's on this EE here where she increases the damage dealt for S1 by 10%. Because she's on a counter build, she'll be S1ing more often, so might as well get some more mileage out of that. Moving on here, we have Shalltear. Shalltear is going to be pretty solid. I actually did put this event craft piece on her, which is pretty good. I am trying to put her on a lifesteal build, trying to make her a bit more versatile. My other craft here is going to be lifesteal set, my current event craft. So I'm going to hopefully put her on lifesteal with about 10 less speed, keeping around the same damage. She also has Pipette Lance as her artifact, mostly just because you can heal and keep yourself above a healthy threshold, above that 50% threshold. Even if you are, like, above 50% health, you can still heal. Otherwise, you could go for something like Sigurd or Golden Rose or something like that. But yeah, I do need to change her as well because her artifact, her imprint here actually overcaps her on crit, so I do need to tweak her build. I could probably get more speed or more damage out of it. Alright, next up we have Araz, used in PvE content. I don't really use him in PvP anymore. It was that time where I used DN and Araz in every single RTA match, and people got sick of seeing them. But they were really effective in that meta against Ravi and Handguy, so it's not bad. But yeah, this is currently my build speed immunity set. We've got Aureus as well, so there's a mitigation. You could actually bring him into PvP with similar stats to this if you're starting out in RTA and you're like, I just want to play with some 3 stars or have more accessible units. Araz is not terrible. Next up, we have Fire Cecilia. So I use her in PvE. This is also a PvP build, so she's 250 speed. Typically, I would bring her into something like an Tywin if they're not playing really fast, if they're playing a standard match and they have an Tywin on their side. Unfortunately, nowadays, everyone has an opener, so Emma Politis, Lilias, Lua, Nahkwol, Zio, Ron, right? everything under the moon. So she unfortunately has just kind of fallen off the map there in terms of my go-to counter for a Tywin. Now I'd rather just go for like a DJB or LRK, have the immunity buff come up, and then we'll be fine. She is on this EE though. You get the decreased speed debuff, which is good for PvE content like the Earth Expedition, for example, where she shines. Next up, we have Fire Charlotte. Fire Charlotte, she's getting kind of replaced by Fire Ravi at this point. She does guarantee crits, which is good against things like ML Landy, but she just doesn't have the damage. Just straight up doesn't have the damage, and it might be because we're, you know, using like an HP boot, or sorry, speed boot here. Her speed is abysmal. But yeah, she's just lacking damage stats. Maybe I could have a more offensive Charlotte, but then she won't be tanky enough. And if she's not tanky enough, then she won't live long enough to deal the damage. So, kind of a problem. We do have increased hit chance on her EE. Or sorry, not EE, Artifact, and then it penetrates defense as well. Her EE here gives her HP, and we get increased combat readiness every time we are attacked. Alright, next up is Ilynav. This is what she looks like. Speed pen set. I didn't really change her build from the last time, I don't think. I think you can probably get away with getting a destruction build on her too. That'd be pretty effective. But currently right now I can only afford to put speed pen set on her. Otherwise I think she'll be a little too slow with destruction. 280, like 180 speed is like not enough for what I need her for. We got mature sunglasses as well, just for some extra damage, a little bit of mitigation built in, and she gets extra combat readiness when she uses her S3. So I tried using her in the last season, it just didn't really work out. The injury I thought would be kind of nice in some situations, especially against Laya, but she's just too inconsistent, too easily controlled, and you absolutely die to things like ML Landy, so you do have to watch out for that. Next up we have Fire Lilias. Mine's built to kind of counter Lua, and Lua fell off the face of the planet, so no one uses her really much anymore. Even if you don't pre-ban her, no one ever picks her. So Nahkwol's just kind of taken her place as the better Lua. Surprisingly, because when Nahkwol was released, people all thought that Lua was better still. But yeah, Ancient Dragon's Legacy is really just for that, but this doesn't work against Nahkwol, so do keep that in mind. It's only really against Lua. So she doesn't really see much use right now, and she does have the combat readiness increase EE too, so people still use her in Guild War defenses, I just currently don't have that set up. Next up, we have Winter. So Winter here is on 270 speed, a little bit of effectiveness here and there. I am really disappointed in how she performs, mostly because every time I use her, she would be great. She'd be absolutely fantastic in those drafts, but she gets 15% on her stun, and then we lose. She has a 2-turn stun on her S3 if you don't know, which is good against Laya. Sweet Miracle can only reduce that stun by 1 turn, so Laya will still be stunned and she'll lose her first turn, which is huge. The problem is, when you get 15%, your opponent just gets to go and do everything they want, and then you're screwed. So that's the reason why I kind of backed off of using Winter. She does have her moments, but 15% is too strong. Moving on, we have Jenua. So speaking of a unit that gets the job done, yeah, he never gets 15%ed because his only role in the team is just raw damage output. Just look at something the wrong way and yeah, they just explode. So this is currently my build on him. This necklace needs to be way better, but we're using what we have. Same with this ring, it could be much better, but it's okay. Yeah, so Destruction Torrent set, mine is just a full damage build. I obviously can go more crit damage, but I chose to go with more attack just so that we can do more damage against anti-crit or evasion units if we miss. Still do a good chunk. He's on Wind Rider, my plus 27 copy, and gives a ton of attack, right? Especially after you kill, so next hit is even more damage, especially given that he self-attack buffs, and he has a rage buff too, so he's pretty stacked. Next up we have Kayron. I don't think I actually used him in the season. Maybe I drafted him once or twice, but yeah, I think he got banned in like every instance that I tried. He is a high res build, so 190 resistance, decent chunk of damage in here, and he's on counter as well. So you just want him to sit there. Double-edged Decrescent just gives him more evasion as well once he gets his evasion buff. After his immortality is procced, it's pretty good, and gives him an increased chance to counterattack. All you really want is for him to be the last one alive against Cleave. They don't have a stripper, they just keep attacking him. He has chances to counter, his counter's AoE, and then everyone dies. That's also why my EE is the damage EE, just so you make sure everyone dies. Next up we have Beehoo. So Beehoo here, I used him a bit at the start of the season. I had him a bit faster too, I think at like 280 speed. I kind of cut away some of his gear, that's why he looks terrible right now. You can see by the ring is not great. So I just slapped this on because I had a spare ring. But yeah, 270 speed. I gave him more damage because it's an attack ring. He normally is on like an HP ring, so he's usually pretty bulky. I think the way to go is like a little less bulk and then a bit more like damage. So something around like 3.5k attack is a pretty decent spot, just so your burns can kill Midnight Gala Lilias's. And that's the main reason I used him at the beginning of the season, because I had trouble with her. Seal of Capture is a good artifact for him. If you don't have this, you can probably get away with like Guiding Light or something too. But yeah, this was an event artifact. Just gives an extra chance to burn. So on your first turn, you can just S1 to Midnight Gala Lilias, get 2 burns on her, and then pop her, and it's over. And then this is the EE I'm currently on, the increase attack and defense by 5%. Is the passive? It's not terrible. I think one of the better ones is just to get the burn on his S3. That's also really, really strong, especially if you have a good attack too. Alright, next up we have Nahkwol. Nahkwol, I don't really use her all that much anymore. I think she'll probably see a resurgence in my draft soon because of the band protection. But yeah, she's about 280 something speed, 285 speed. She's on Guiding Light just so you can't get hit by Zeos at the start of the match. She's pretty good. She's pretty strong. I just, yeah, I need to work her back to my drafts. I used her a bit at the beginning of the season and mid-season too, but near the end of the season it just kind of fell off. She didn't really fit too well in my playstyle, and we didn't have, again, band protection yet, but now that that's the case, she's going to be an incredible unit. Alright, next up we have Summertime Iseria. You guys see me use her, I think, a little bit in Guild Wars. She's actually really good with Politis and Celine. You can use Summertime Iseria into Jenua teams, like ML Politis Jenua teams in Guild War defenses. If you use Summertime Iseria, Politis, and Celine, easily take care of the Jenua, and Summertime Iseria can just bomb and stun any of the remaining units. Star of the Deep Sea, her own artifact, is the best slot for her. Allows her to get bombs on her S1, and then you just detonate them with her S3. Alright, next up we have Meru. So Meru is actually used in PvE content for me, Nightmare Labyrinth, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on her with it. I mean, you can clearly see that some pieces can be reforged, but I just haven't done it. She's not really seeing much use outside of Nightmare Labyrinth and like the Earth Expedition, but she is on her own artifact, which is pretty good. Next up we have Milim. Milim is currently not built, so we're going to skip her. A work in progress. I really didn't use her at all last season, unfortunately. But hey, maybe with the rise of stealth units, she could see a comeback. Alright, next up we have Politis here. Politis is actually been really useful. So this is my current build on her. She is on Fairy Tail for a Nightmare right now because I've been using her in Guild Wars mostly. I haven't really been using her in RTA much, but I'll show you what her stats look like on book. So we're going to switch this over, and yeah, normally on book she is pretty good for like a aggro team. Sometimes I do like to try to pivot into an aggro draft, so Zeo and then like get a Politis or something on your team and then go from there. Judge Kisei Cleave uses Politis as well sometimes. She's a good book holder, so pretty decent stats overall. I had some effectiveness, so I did skimp a little bit of the damage out for that, just so we can land those debuffs, which is pretty crucial in some instances. Next up, we have Researcher Carrot, one of my favorite units in the entire game. Her gear hasn't changed for a while, actually, but it's pretty solid gear. The speed and immunity set. All she needs to do is kind of sit there. The opponent's attacker, she burns them. I have on Etika Scepter. You turn cycle your S3, so you can pop your S3s and burn them, and then you pop your S1s on them, and you detonate those burns, and everything just dies, which is beautiful. She doesn't need a whole ton of effectiveness. Mostly you're just burning the DPS units and finishing them off. But yeah, otherwise, stack up on that bulk, as you can see in that ring, stacking up on that bulk here, so that she doesn't die herself. Alright, next up we got Roy Mustang. He did get a little bit of upgrade. Look at those stats. So he has Torrent right here, along with Lifesteal, about 200 speed, 300 crit damage, and over 4,300 attack, which I'm very proud of. It's all the flat attack stats coming through, honestly. And he's on the Chatty artifact, which helps him survive. Now, Roy in general, in RTA, He's not doing too great right now because you have a lot of things that splash damage. 3F units, Karina with Rocket Punch, right? Aria with splash damage, Fairy Tail for Nightmares running amok. But in those instances where those units are not there and you're not fighting any ice units, he could actually be a really good solo candidate against really tanky teams. He does have the potential to do that still. Alright, next up we have Shuna. I don't think I really drafted her in RTA. She has a pretty solid build. I could probably get a bit more resistance on her, honestly. And I might actually switch her artifact over to like a Soul Consolation. That might be better than what she's currently on. She's on Unfading Memories, which does give a bit of effect resistance and gives a bit of healing for her S2 and S3, which is kind of nice because it is something she lacks in her kit. But I think being able to cut and just sleep your opponent is just much more valuable. So I do have the Sleeping EE, which increases the chance to 100%, which is really nice for her. But yeah, I think I need to tweak her build a little bit more. We'll see. Next up is Choux, hidden MVP of the season, not gonna lie. So Choux's been putting in a ton of work. As you can see, she's really tanky here. 25k health and almost 1400 defense. 170 speed is good enough on a counter build. You can see she's even on really budget boots here. Free pair of boots. Yeah, the crit damage could be a little bit higher, but honestly, she does just fine in terms of damage. Golden Roses here as well for some healing, for some extra damage output as well. And she's on the chance to obviously foosh when you use your S1. That's the best EE for her. The 10 speed on the EE is actually really, really nice. Helps you just allocate stats to other things like bulk, right? You want to make her tanky and hard to kill. And she's been putting a lot of work in the last season, so I do like it. Alright, next up we have Lethe. Is a unit that honestly has been kind of disappointing me lately. Probably because there's so many injury units running around that you can't really get much done with her. So if there's no injury units on the team, you could probably get away with using her here. Unfortunately, I only have a plus 15 Prayer of Solitude, but if you have a maxed one, it's going to be pretty sick. You get around 30k health and she just nukes stuff into oblivion. She works faster. Sorry, I shouldn't say faster. She's on par with like Laya in terms of her nuking capabilities. She does ignore damage share, which is kind of good if you use Frostbite from the S3. The issue is again, one, the injuries, and two, her damage output isn't that incredible, probably because my bulk hasn't been great, but I did bulk her up a little bit more. And maybe one day we'll upgrade the Prayer of Solitude so that she can do better. She does have Extinction, which makes her decent to use into stuff like Abyssal Yufine that uses Holy Sacrifice or teams that revive. Alright, next up we have Karina. So Karina here on a speed defense build. Mine's currently not on a counter build. I don't have the counter pieces. I've tried repeatedly to try to switch her to counter, and I just don't have the stuff. I like her bulk. I like her stats here, especially the 150 resistance, and she's on Rocket Punch Gauntlet as well. The resist has been helping me out the most, honestly. The reason I can't switch to counter is I can't keep these stats while maintaining the resistance. I always lose the resist, and I can't have that. She does too good when she can't be controlled. Alright, next up we have Krau. Krau's still on a revenge set, honestly, it's pretty funny. 170 speed's a little slow, but then again, it's revenge, it's not a whole speed set. And he's on immunity too. So he's pretty bulky, 28k health, because he's on not on speed boost. That's also one of the reasons why he's a bit slower. And he's on Holy Sacrifice too, just currently. I don't really use him on RTA right now, but Holy Sacrifice is pretty decent in Guild Wars if you're tanking an Earth Nuke. And we also have him on the extra chance to provoke on his S1, so he has a 100% chance with this EE, which is pretty decent. I could probably speed him up, honestly, if I put him on a speed set, but I kind of like the meme of the revenge build. Yeah, I'm alright with it. Next up, Summer Break Charlotte. I actually did take her out into RTA a couple times. She did do okay. Not terrible. Mine is obviously not a cleave build, not an aggro build. Mine's a bulky standard build. So Lifesteal Unity set, you just want to keep dual attacking, keep getting those extra hits in. She's on Portrait of the Saviors, which works out quite well for increasing the damage that she does, especially if you're nuking somebody with your S3. I don't really use her that much, but as a niche pick, if you need an ice unit that can AoE potentially from time to time, she's not bad. Alright, so speaking of Ice Knights, we have Tywin as the last one here. So he's actually on a decent build, almost 26k health. He's pretty healthy. Mix of effectiveness and effect res. The issue with him is that the backline unit has to be hit while they're stunned or slept for him to activate his passive to cleanse them. And that's the main thing holding him back. Because DDR's non-attack skill, like all that stuff, won't proc the Tywin to cleanse. So yeah, at this point, he's just kind of a worse version of Dragon King Sharoon, which is kind of sad. I do want to see him get his niche back. Every single time he's overshadowed by somebody, right? Flan was better than him in every regard before, and now Dragon King Sharoon is kind of taking his spot too. His S1, by the way, just gets combat readiness to the backline, which is okay. It's not terrible. If you build, some people build them on counter too, so you can just keep S1ing and keep pushing the person in the back forward, which is not bad. So next up, Elvira. So Elvira here on a resist build and speed build. I really do like this one here because she does a bit of effectiveness, which helps. If you get an effectiveness buff for some reason, maybe like a DDR on your team, then you can actually debuff things like Crimson Arminds, Arwells, other common knights like LRK. So, not terrible. Her bulk is a little low, but again, she just needs to survive to the point where she gets immortality, and at around 245, 250 speed, she's looking pretty decent. Hostess of the Banquet as well, mostly here for the effect resistance. There's no increased damage. She has no damage at all, but the Beguile does do a little bit of chip, which is not bad. Okay, next we have Byblis, right, so Byblis here, 250 speed, she's on speed set and hit set. Been using her more often lately, because she's seeing a bit of resurgence with like ML Landies coming back full force in RTA, especially in the last half of the season. So Byblis out there with ML Bellona is really strong. I switched her over from the Iron Fan to the old Gardening Shears, so now she has a chance to stealth, which increases her longevity. People tend to focus Byblis down as soon as they can, and also she's able to inflict random debuffs on the opponent, like unhealables and stuff, which is not bad. Alright, moving on, we got Seaside Bellona, still on her same build as before, don't really use her all that much. Keep trying to look for excuses to use her, and she could be pretty decent against something like Jenua. I'm just afraid that she doesn't have enough bulk to survive against the Jenua, so that's why I've been holding off on her. She could probably be used on Bloodstone, honestly, but I do have her on her own artifact here, on Drink, the old classic. And she is on the S2E where she dispels a debuff whenever she does the rest too. So this is really good and kind of one of the reasons why I want to use her against Genuas. But again, she does have her weaknesses in the meta as well, which is pretty much every Earth unit. Alright, next up we have Aria. So Aria is typically on the artifact that we took away from her. She's on Fairy Tale for a Nightmare. So if I slap this back on her here, you'll see her full stats. So almost 14k HP, 2000 defense, 170 speed, 240 crit damage, and about a 150 resist. The resist is the main thing that I like about her. I wish it was higher, but again, you can use Christy. You can also use Bastion of Hope on her as well to increase her effect resistance. I just really like the Fairy Tale for a Nightmare and the damage it does and the way it deals with Genuas in RTA. So Aria has seen a resurgence for me in play, but yeah, it's mostly due to the Genuas running around and the fact that she got this really nice EE. She should be on the EE that starts you with one focus, by the way. I just didn't craft that, so I got this along the way and I just went with it. You should definitely start with the one with one focus at the start of the match. It's probably her best one. Alright, next up is Fumyr. So Fumyr is on a speed resist build. Speed set, resist set, 230 speed, a lot of effectiveness, 150, and a little bit of resistance, right? About 100 there. Very satisfying to look at this stats here from crit chance to effect resist. But I don't use her in RTA at all, unfortunately. I do use her from time to time in Guild Wars, but my teams aren't usually fast enough, and my fastest units are usually MLs, not RGB units. So Fumyr just kind of loses out of in value in terms of that. Okay, so next up we have Elena. I've been trying to use Elena some more lately. She does have some decent AoE mitigation with her healing. Mine's on a counter build and resist build. Obviously she never counters enough really to warrant the counter set, but hey, I have the stats, so it works. 250 resist, pretty decent. Decent amount of bulk here, good amount of speed, and she's on Celestine, which is the reason why I have her on counter. Just so when she gets hit, she has a chance to counter and heal the team and keep everyone nice and healthy, because that's one of the things she lacks in her kit besides her S2. The S2 has a little bit of healing, but other than that, she doesn't have any otherwise. I have her on the EE where she dispels an additional debuff when using her S3, which is good. You can dispel 2 before putting the invincibility on. When you have an unbuffable, it really sucks, so this really combats that weakness of her kit. Okay, next up we have Valencia. I did switch up her build actually. This is a new build. So she's on injury and 21 KHP is not bad. She used to be, I think, a bit more, 22 KHP. 1300 defense. We got a little bit of crit rate missing, but that's okay. I'll get to the artifact later. Injury and pen set. So she does do quite a bit of damage. About 258 crit damage is fine because she's on Ed's artifact, so we get more crit damage and a bit more speed here, along with a flat 10% crit rate increase. It's pretty good value for her. And then we also have her on the EE where she recovers health every time she uses her S1, which has been alright. And she gets crit rate from this too, which is good value. But yeah, otherwise, I kind of want to try her out in RTA. I just can't find the situations where I can use her. 221 speed, I think, is a good threshold. I haven't tested this build. My old build, though, was about 190 speed, so I never used her at that speed. This one might be plausible, though. Next up, we have Arunka. Arunka over here. So about 6,800 attack. It's not terrible. I could probably get a couple more imprints on her. Speed set, pen set, and she just has some bulk and speed. Really straightforward unit. I don't really use her too much in RTA. She's kind of tricky to draft because she needs a lot of support units. Could probably work way better now with Bam Protection, honestly. But she is on a Little Queen's Huge Crown for some extra damage against barrier units, which is her specialty. So we'll see if we can get a chance for her to shine there. But yeah, getting that increased combat readiness by 30% when using the S3 is also a solid EE. It lets her turn cycle quite a bit and get to more of those units that have barriers on the other side before those barriers expire. Next up we have Laya. This is a modified build. You see the bit of crit rate there. I don't want to mod it out. This crit rate here, didn't want to mod out here. I think this is supposed to be crit damage up there. So mod it to flat HP, but it's a really good sword. It's just that this just happens to be the one that's best suited for Laya at the moment, so I gave it to her. And you see here 23 speed, but I don't want to mod that crit rate because what if I want to mod that flat health away for crit damage? You know, it could be a good piece for a DPS unit. So I'm just holding off. She could be a bit tankier, but honestly, she gets the job done, so it's fine. And yeah, that's pretty much it for her gear. She's just bulky, fast, and that's all you need for her. She doesn't need to be 270 speed. I've seen people pull her off with much lower speeds, 240, 250. It's okay. It depends on your playstyle and your speed tuning. And Sweet Miracle obviously is great on her because it allows you to decrease the debuff durations on her by a turn. So if she's stunned or slept, it won't stop her from cleansing the entire team. It's pretty good, and I like it. Alright, next up we have Zahak, who got his ring stolen, so we're not going to go over him, actually. I never used him at all. Haven't used him in like 2 or 3 seasons, so no point in going over him here. Shalltear kind of took over there. Okay, we have Albedo. So Albedo, currently on a counter build with an HP set. It's looking really good. She has 150 resist, which is kind of nice. Prevents the, casual debuffers out there from getting to you. And we have 3F as the artifact too. So a lot of splash damage here, kind of like Rocket Punch Gauntlet, but it's HP scaling, which is why I'm focusing so much on HP here with HP boots too and an HP set. The counter build with 3F is really good. It deals considerable amount of damage, and you don't even need crit rate or crit damage to get that job done. So Albedo, I think, very underrated knight as of right now, but I think more and more people are turning around to her as the Overlord collab, looms further away into the past. Alright, next up we have Charles. People fear Charles, apparently, banning him, actually, whenever I try to draft him here. So, counter build with pen set. Yeah, he's a monster, and I love him. So 160 speed, decent mid speed. He's just a unit like Fire Ravi is too stat hungry. So by looking at his stats, you're like, wow, that looks terrible, but it's honestly using some of my best gear already. Elbrus Ritual Sword to help with the counters, right? With the counter set too, so no matter what you hit, he has a chance to screw you over. And of course, increase the chance to go into S2 from the S1. I might switch this to cleanse everything with an S3, because he does get debuffed really, really hard, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see if I use him more often. Next up, we have Falconer Kluri. So she's also on a revenge build. I honestly kind of really want to use her more, but after her buff, they kind of just had like, they had Elvira, they had Politis, so why even bother with Falconer Kluri? She's just like a 3-star budget option to do resource reduction, honestly, and I have her on Nostalgic Music Box. I could probably make her a bit better. We'll see if I have spare gear to move things around and try to make her better. I would like to use her, but again, with Politis and stuff running around, why bother, right? That's the main thing with her, is just why bother. Although I really do like her design, she looks amazing. Alright, next up we got the Great Mortelix, of course. My Mort is looking pretty not great. I can probably bulk him up a bit more and either increase his speed or decrease his speed, because 220 I don't think is really necessary. The rage buff and speed buff he gives himself is pretty good. So you do have to keep that in mind. He does turn cycle quite well with both of those buffs on him. And I have the extended crit resist buff via turn EE, which is nice because he can keep 100% uptime on that crit resist buff for his entire team. So yeah, not too shabby. I just need to kind of work on him a bit more. I don't know if I want to go injury. I don't know if I want to go destruction. I don't know if I want more speed. He's just a unit that's kind of a little bit shy of being incredible in RTA. Alright, next up we got Senya. So even with her skin, unfortunately, I re-geared her and still don't really use her. There's too many units that just guarantee crits right now. There's Fire Charlotte, there's Bellona, there's Ken, and now there's Fire Ravi, and Senya's just kind of fallen off a cliff just compared to those units, right? So yeah, when they release more counters to Landy, they're just indirectly releasing more counters to Senya, and that hurts. I know some people go for a like an attack set, and some people go for lifesteal with a greater attack buff EE. I'm currently just on a speed build, and I have the kind of lifesteal EE here, right, where you get health back every time you S1. We'll try to find more opportunities to use her, but it's becoming really tough. Maybe I just bulk her up even more and just use her as an anti-cleave unit, but who knows how successful that'll be. Alright, next up we have Christy. Been using her quite a bit, and you guys seem to like her too. So mine's on a double resist and single HP set build. She's on 280 resist, and honestly, I don't think it's enough. I think I need more resistance, so I'm gonna be trying to re-gear her in the coming days, coming weeks, and hopefully we can get her to over 300 resist, because she gets debuffed by Zeo sometimes, and I hate it. Absolutely hate it. Bastion of Perlucia's on her right now, so she does give the back row a big nice barrier and immunity, good for buff stacking, especially against faster teams who try to strip your buffs with their openers. Alright, next up we have Yoha. Yoha's on a speed HP build. I think I took her out a few times, and she actually did okay. The reflect damage in her kit is pretty decent. She's kind of like a Krau, functions similarly. She has an Aureus to mitigate damage, and yeah, overall, pretty solid. The only complaint I have is I wish I had a bit more resist, but it's hard to do that while keeping all the other stats too. Alright, next up is Celine. I know she just got buffed. I didn't change her gear from before or after she got buffed, so she's currently still on the same gear she always had, Destruction and Pen set. I think I might still keep her pretty bulky. I know that she's going to be protected by stealth, but you don't need that much damage to kill things, right? So I might reduce her bulk a little bit and then increase her damage. But I really do like her bulky, just so if she gets broken out of stealth, she can still survive and sit there, and your opponent can do nothing. This currently is still the one that attacked the enemy with the highest highest attack, and that is still what I go for, because it makes your Celine more predictable, and that's what you want. You want consistency with your units in RTA. Alright, next up we have Midnight Gala Lilias. So, Midnight Gala Lilias here is on a Torrent build and a Speed build. She's currently 265 speed, so not too bad. And I did lower her attack a little bit, but that's mostly because of Wind Rider. I did downgrade her from the other one. The other one's on Jenua right now. I don't use Midnight Gala Lilias that much anymore, because she has so many counters. Apparently every time I pick her, I just get screwed over by my opponent counterpicking against her. Meanwhile, when my opponent picks her, I can hardly scrounge up any resources to fight her. But yeah, that's the situation she's in. Still solid, and I still pick her from time to time. Right, so moving on, we got Destina. This is actually really funny because this is not my genuine Destina build. How I got this build was I was taking gear for other units, and then I decided to try this Equip All feature, and this Equip All feature was pretty sick. Because it worked quite well. It actually just made a pretty decent Destina. This is something I'd be okay with taking into RTA. I will be making a video on like this feature and then like comparing it to things like Fribbles as well. I do want to do that when I get more time this summer. But yeah, this genuine, this like Destina build is actually decent. Guardian Ice Crystals on her for some healing. We do have the extra combat readiness push on the S2 healing, and her gears here aren't bad. Yeah, she has a bit of effectiveness, but, you know, on some gears you could potentially mod that out. That's one thing about the in-game thing is you can't see what potential modded out stats could be. Like, you can mod these out easily, right? And along with the effectiveness, I think there was some here. See, I can just mod out all these, and then add either more health or more defense or anything else, right, that I might need. So yeah, pretty decent. This Destina I do use in Nightmare Raid. You can obviously use her in RTA too. She's kind of fallen off in RTA, mostly because ML Haste is a thing now and it's a better reviver, but Destina in the reviving, it's a little too slow. The Destina meta, the hand guy meta, those are very reactive metas where turn 2 players have to just kind of sit there, tank in the damage, and then you can like come back, right? You can revive, you can cleanse, you can do all these things. Now the game is too aggressive. If you sit back and do nothing, you're just gonna get run over by RNG, ML Landies, Abyssal U Fiends, right? Genuas, everything's just gonna slaughter you before you even get a chance to move. So that's why she's kind of fallen off there in terms of usage. Next up, Ocean Breeze Luluca. The nail in her coffin was ML Politis. So ML Politis, when you choose her, yeah, Ocean Breeze Luluca's kind of dead. You can't get focused fast enough to get her S2 off. Her S2 is the main reason that you use her, because while Ice Cream buff and Defense buff are great, along with the cleansing of 2 debuffs, she doesn't do that very often, and you need that S2 to come in every once in a while to debuff your opponents, to strip their buffs, and disrupt their plays. But my Ocean Breeze Luluca is still pretty decently geared, 240-something speed, pretty good resist as well. Guardian Ice Crystals gives her another 15% resist, so she's looking pretty decent. If I concentrate her resist here, yeah, there you go. With the Guardian Ice Crystal, she's about 260 resist, in a pretty decent spot. But yeah, I used her a ton in last season, but this season she's starting to fall off a little bit. You can already tell ever since ML Politis' release that her use just plummeted, unfortunately. Next up, Rowana. So speaking of units whose uses have changed, Rowana, she never changes. Her usage never changes. So she is currently on a resist and counter build. And she's used everywhere, from PvE to PvE. Legitimately, every single piece of content can use her. She's like the best unit you can invest in. It's insane. So you can actually concentrate her health too. As you can see, it's pretty bulky. I currently have her on Touch of Rekos, but you can definitely use her on other artifacts. Touch of Rekos is currently for Ancient Inheritance. As I said, you can use her everywhere, but Stella Harpa is a really good one to get debuffs, cleanse going on in RTA, especially with extra attack units. It's really, really nice. And Idol's Cheer is also a really good one in PvE if you're in like ice expeditions and stuff and you're using Rowana there. So yeah, do keep that in mind. It is pretty solid. Next up, we have Sharoon. She's on a counter build and a hit set. She currently has almost 20k HP. It's very solid. And she's on Potion Vial. So Potion Vial is mainly because she turn cycles quite nicely. This is good speed for a counter build too. So she's turn cycles quite nicely, and she can cleanse from the team because she doesn't have any cleansing in her kit normally. And then I have the EE where she decreases the cooldown of her S3 by a turn, allowing her to turn cycle more, and her S3 already gives herself 50% more combat readiness, so again, you're just trying to see more turns. She's really good into Laya. Actually use her as like a secret tech into Laya picks now sometimes, because she can reset the Laya and disrupt her passive, which decreases her turn cooldowns by a turn every time she takes a turn. Meanwhile, Sharoon increases those turn cooldowns, so you kind of counteract that, and you can throw off the pacing of her S3, which throws off the whole tempo of your opponent's team. The counter build also helps with that too. If she gets attacked and she resets them, it's golden, right? But yeah, she is a difficult character to use, but if you can pull it off, very rewarding. Next off, Lilias. I'm starting to use her more, so here's my build, 299 speed. I know, she doesn't look super bulky, but let's get to her gear. The fastest unit that's currently on my account here, and she doesn't have that much effectiveness, she doesn't really need it. Here's the reason why she's not super bulky. Because we have a flat defense necklace, and we have a flat HP ring. That's right, these are my fastest pieces here. I'm struggling, guys. I'm struggling quite a bit, but we're still making it work. We're still making it work. We also have a nostalgic music box to help out with some extra buffs, and of course, if I do imprint concentration, she does get a little bit more bulk, but in most cases, I just go for the imprint release, and she helps the team deal more damage, which is nice. Next up, we have Judge Kisei. So this is my Judge Kisei right here with speed and crit set. Ideally, you can probably get torrent set on her, but she's super stat hungry, even as she is right now. So crit set is just the way to go for me currently, and she's on Circus Fantasia as well to get the extra 15% crit chance, and you get a ton of effectiveness too. So this is really good value for her because she wants effectiveness to land her debuffs. She wants full crit rate because she's a damage dealer. She wants speed because she's an aggro speed cleave damage dealer, and she wants, of course, the attack and crit damage for, you know, cleaving and aggro shenanigans. So yeah, I do need to actually go ahead and mola her, finish moling her here, but I'll do that another time. She is missing a little bit of damage with that. Next up, we have Lionheart Cermia. Lionheart here is currently still on a lifesteal build. I know most people have kind of changed over to a destruction build, but lifesteal's still working out quite well for me. My destruction pieces are not looking too good right now in terms of getting her to the stats that I want her to be, which is what you currently see. She is actually 100% crit rate if I imprint her like this, and she's on Durandal too. So Durandal's my secret tech. I know a lot of people either go Lifesteal Proof of Valor or they go Destruction with a Golden Rose. So I'm going Durandal because every time they hit Lionheart, they try to finish her off. She cuts, she takes a turn, she S3s, Lifesteal's back, perfectly healthy again, and yeah, if you pair her with certain units, you get so much combat readiness, it's absolutely insane. Especially like something like Rowana. Rowana with Lionheart against Navy Captain Landy is just combat readiness heaven. You might still absolutely die to the Landy, but at least you take a lot of combat readiness. Alright, moving on, we have Little Queen Charlotte. Again, I still haven't tweaked her build from previous builds. This is just currently what she's on right now. A lot of HP, by the way. A lot of HP, I know. Her star sign was changed so that she does have more HP here. I think her star sign was changed. I don't remember. I know she got a crit chance concentration, though. So that's why I do need to change her build. So with this crit rate concentration, I need to change her build to be a bit more... maybe a bit more faster, a bit, just keep the tankiness and then keep the damage. She's on Hellcutter still. I don't really like Benimaru's Tachi on her necessarily. I'd rather just have the immunity set. It works out quite well for me. I just want her to be bulky. I don't like the fast LQCs. I feel like they don't have enough damage. So when you're slow and you're a ticking time bomb, it works out quite well. But yeah, she works against Abyssal Fiends. That's all I really need her to do. Next up, we have a Tywin. Tywin's build is pretty decent. He's on an offset piece, but it's alright. He's on a speed set too. And normally he's 27k HP, but normally I imprint release him so that he gives more bulk to everybody else. 6.5% HP to everyone else is decent, as opposed to 9% on himself. Right? Not bad, but he doesn't really need it. He's on Aureus right now to soak up damage for the team. I usually when I pick him, Conqueror Lilias comes out, so on the other side. So I always pair him up with something like Albedo. Pretty good duo. Not too shabby. He also pairs really well with ML Politis too, so high speed is preferable, and I don't need the effectiveness because of that, because it's so easy to get him enraged that you ignore res anyway. Alright, next up is Bellion, currently still in an injury bill, not the greatest. I did take a few of her pieces for Alencia, but yeah, I do want to figure out what I want for her. I don't know if injury is still the way to go for me. It is nice when my opponent picks Ed or Lionheart or something like that, expecting the extra attack, expecting the debuffs, and they never come. So I might switch over to a full counter build though, just to screw over the cleavers some more, especially because you can lock her in now in BAM protection. It's gonna be pretty solid. So yeah, Aureus she's still, I think, still gonna be on Aureus. I don't think I'll put her on Elbrus, but Aureus is still really solid in terms of mitigating damage for the team. So I love it. Speaking of mitigation for damage, Crimson Armin, look at those stats on the left. We have her on an HP set and a protection set. It's going to be really nice. Big, bulky barriers for everyone to start the match, and she can't be finished off by Midnight God Lilias because of her passive, reducing the crit damage that she's taking. Reduces damage from all sources, actually. But yeah, Midnight God Lilias can't finish her off in one shot. She gets close, but no one shot. Alright, but yeah, she's on Aureus to help mitigate some damage for the team as well. Increases defense of everyone too. One commonly overlooked aspect of Aureus and why it makes everyone so tanky. Speaking of Aureus, another Aureus user here, we have Last Rider Krau. So pretty tanky as well, 27,000 health, almost 1,600 defense, and almost 190 speed. The good thing about my Last Rider Krau is he's on a lifesteal build, which means every time he has threes, he heals back quite a considerable amount of health, which helps him stay in the game for longer. I have trolled around before using Holy Sacrifice on him too. It's actually pretty funny. So, but yeah, currently on Aureus, it's a more sustainable artifact for the long term. Next up, we have Navy Captain Landy. I did change my build, so you guys are just in time to see it. This is a 0-speed build with a bit of bulk and a lot of damage. This is kind of like the meta version of Landy right now. You don't need speed on her at all. You rely on her counters, you rely on her CR push, and most importantly, you rely on dual attacks from C. Lilias, from Emma Politis, from Laya. Anybody, as long as you have one of them on your team, your Navy Captain Landy is probably going to be RNGing your opponent to oblivion. She's on Elbrus Ritual Sword, of course. I didn't give her my best copy, just because I don't trust her. She never counters for me anyway. So it's just on her for good measure, just in case. One day, maybe she'll have a change of heart. But yeah, she's been proving to be pretty good too in RTA. It's really hard. Alright, next up we have Arowell, another knight that I re-geared and just switched up. Look, if I just imprint Concentrator, also 30k HP. So knights now are like kind of evolving to become super tanky. In response to stuff like Midnight God Lilias, in response to stuff like Navy Captain Landy, you just have to tank through everything as a turn 2 player. And so here we are, tanking through everything. We actually have a defense set going too, which is really rare. It's like one of the worst sets in the game, but hey, it gets the job done here. We have Bastion of Perlucia as well, so not only does she grant immunity to the backline player, but 27% of her max health of 30,000 HP. It's a pretty good, sizable barrier for the backline, and again, you can utilize her with buff stacking too, so you can use her and like Navy Captain Landy. Now you got immunity, barrier, and anti-crit on the unit in the backline, and so when your opponent's trying to strip those buffs, good luck, right? Good luck. Alright, moving on, we got Specimen Sez. He's been seeing a little decline in his use. I kind of do want, the dream set for him is to make him on lifesteal, but we can't really manage that right now. So he's currently still on destruction, just straight up damage, and he does pretty good. Pen set as well, just because I can, just because it helps his S1 damage out a little bit. Not terrible. It helps his S3 out damage too when he is attacking someone who's not stunned, right? So it does allow him to guarantee some kills that he otherwise wouldn't get. Moonlight Dreamblade for that consistent attack buff, and of course the extra evasion, so he's at 70% with his, like, I wouldn't say passive, but with his S3, right? As long as his S3 is available, he has that 50% evasion, so 70% total, kinda nice. Next up, Eye Celine. She's currently on a, just a, you know, standard stuff that I had on her for a while. On Lifesteal and Pen set, some of this gear is actually going to be going towards Shalltear. Eye Celine, again, kind of like Roy, just fallen off the meta really hard. It's really difficult to use her because of all the splash damage, of all the extra attacks, of all the counter attacks, and all the shenanigans. You just get absolutely obliterated, right? So it's kind of sad. She did get reworked a little bit. She is a bit better now in terms of damage. So I might slow her down a little bit and give her a bit more damage. We'll see. Next up, we have Astromancer Elena. So Elena here, I built her to play kind of aggressive, kind of pivot into like aggro, and if my opponent had ML Landy, I'd pick Astromancer Elena. I think I drafted her like once or twice in the last season, and honestly, she really never saw any play. I think the one time she saw play, I don't even remember how she did, if she won or lost that match, but yeah. Unseen Observer for the extra souls. She does get souls with her passive too, so this actually gives you 20 souls total, which is decent. But yeah, other than that, she's just a beat stick damage dealer that prevents counters. Too bad that a lot of things are considered extra attacks and not counters, so you can still die to those. Next up, Lidica. My Lidika's 290 speed, some of the best speed gear I have on her, as you can clearly see. She's on a lot of broken set pieces, but my speed set pieces need a lot of work, which is why she's still struggling a little bit. I want her, my dream is to get to 300 speed, but of course, that's still just a dream. 170 effectiveness, just so I can get 15% at even harder when I try to reset somebody. And Guiding Light, so I can't get hit by Zeo when he takes the first turn against me. Lidica's used in my Zeo trap teams, so Guiding Light helps a lot. You just stealth behind, and you wait behind Christy. When Christy gets hit, pushes up the Lidica, and then you go ham on your opponent. Alright, next up, Watch Assure is not geared. Neither is that. Neither is that. Okay, cool. Sage Ball and Cezanne. So this is my Sage Ball. Still haven't really changed him much. I could, but I do like his bulk too much to change. He could be faster in terms of speed too. I know some people have 260. I do like the bulk, just so when he gets low, you can actually kill people, as opposed to just kind of being low and not be able to do anything, except control and sleep. So he is still on Bastion of Hope, really good for that 70% extra effect resistance, bringing him to 240 resist, right, which is really nice. I could imprint concentrate him, but there's no point. If you're against cleave teams, giving HP to the team is invaluable, huge for him to keep everybody alive. Alright, next up, Solitaria. We got speed set, we got resist set. I did re-gear her as well, pretty recently, maybe like a couple weeks ago after the end of the season. And yeah, she's 270 speed, got a bit of bulk. I do still like the mix of effectiveness and resistance, and she's on Fairy Tail for a Nightmare for that extra little bit of chip damage. So, you know, she could be a solo DPS unit, but like that ever happens. Usually opponent quits before she can really do anything. When they're stuck against the Solitaria and they're controlled, it's over. Alright, next up, Sylvan Sage actually not geared. I forgot, I took some pieces off of her, so we'll skip her for now. Never used her, by the way, last season. Her time has gone in the meta, unfortunately. DJB, so DJB I'm starting to use a bit more. I still don't think his effect res is high enough, because he still gets hit by Zeos and pushed back, which is insane. But I did put Soul Constellation on him. This should help a little bit. Extra 30% resist, so 270 resist here. Still gonna get debuffed by Zeos, but what can you do? ML Politis can also ignore res Soulburn. But that is the unit that I tend to bring him into, is when ML Politis S3 Soul Constellation pushes me up, I have the effect res to not get pushed back, and then I hopefully take the turn, push up my team, and hopefully the rest is over from there. But usually we still struggle, so it kind of hurts. I wish DJB got a little bit of a buff, right? Just to make him a little bit better, help make effect res easier to build. Anyway, speaking of needing effect res, Dragon King Sharoon does not need any, because you don't care, you just want to get slept and stunned, so Dragon King Sharoon can keep cleansing your team, can keep getting combat readiness pushed up. She's really solid, so mine's currently pretty speedy. Sorry, excuse me. It's currently pretty speedy, 225 speed, pretty good bulk too, and she's on counter set, counter hit set, and she's on Sacred Tree Branch, which increases effectiveness even more, and can help increase the combat readiness, right, of herself and an ally. So with this 22, right, effectiveness here, she actually brings herself up to almost 180 effectiveness, which is insane. I love it. It's super good. And it's saved me a lot in instances. She's one of my favorite characters to use in RTA, honestly, and with ban protection being a thing, she's super strong now in fighting DDR. She can't even get banned anymore, which is good. Next up, Bunny Dom. Speaking of counterplay units, this is my Bunny Dom 260 speed. Really low effect res. I don't really need it. She's on Doctor's Bag for some extra healing and healing and cleansing, right? That's mostly it. So she is currently here, and I use her against DDRs and Sea Lilias sometimes, but sometimes the opponent just gets too overwhelming and you can't really do too much into them. So she's on immunity, so Nahkwol can't seal her because my resist is a little low. But you can use buff stacking with her to make sure she's protected. And in some instances, you can just win the game outright by sitting on a Bunny Dom. And then your opponent can't pop their skills and you put the pressure on. So really solid unit, highly recommend. Mine is on the bulkier side because, again, I'm lacking that resist. You could make yours squishier to make her a bit more resistant, but I find that the resistance is kind of useless in most cases because you're going to have immunity up on her if your opponent takes an extra turn. Right, next up, APOC Ravi. The inferior Ravi now, yet again, they keep switching places. So Destruction and Pen Set here. A lot of damage, 27k HP, 1400 defense. I still feel like she has her place in the meta. Draco play for some extra crit damage, extra mitigation, which is kind of nice. She still has a place, and by that I mean it's a really niche place, but if your opponent lacks damage, or if your opponent is really weak to injury, bring her out and she can still solo teams. It's insane. You just have to be careful against Elvira, against Politis. All these units that shut down Fighting Spirit because obviously she really relies on her Fighting Spirit to stay alive. Next up, Assassin Cartuja, part of the Zeotrap squad, so almost 240 speed, so when he gets attacked and he does dodge, he will push up and kind of cut the opponent, which is pretty good. Speed set, hit set, you know, all the stuff that comes with it. You have Snow Crystal too, so when he evades, by the way, it's considered a non-critical hit if you dodge, and so you also get some critical hit resistance, so in the chance that they do hit you, there's still a chance that they don't crit, which is cool. But yeah, Snow Crystal pretty good. Gives him extra 12% combat readiness. His passive also gives himself combat readiness too, right here. So after successfully evading, increases the CR of all allies except the caster by 10%. That is also a bonus, right? This is why he's used as in the Zeo trap team. So that if they hit Cartuja, he will push up with the passive Snow Crystal, and he pushes everybody else up with this Battle Fever EE. Alright, next up we have, skip that, Axe God. So Axe God unfortunately hasn't seen a revamp in a while. I still have him on this injury build. Honestly, I'm probably going to switch this over to something else soon. Just no one can use this. No one can use this gear, which is why it's still currently on him. He's on immunity set as well, just to make sure he doesn't get debuffed early on. But Durandal on him too. Yeah, it's just not really working out as much as I'd like. So unfortunately, this build is probably going to be scrapped, and I'll probably find something better for him. We'll try to use him against the light meta, but it's going to be hard. It's an uphill battle. Alright, next up, Dark Corvus. Actually, he's not geared, so we're going to skip him, unfortunately. I haven't really used him much this season. In the previous seasons, I did, when he got his buff, but yeah. Designer Lilibet, unfortunately, she's kind of not been great. She's okay when she works. Definitely, solid unit against stuff like DDR sometimes. The thing you have to watch out with DDR is that he can S3, debuff your whole team, proc your Dilibet, and then you can just S1 and sleep your Dilibet, and she can't cleanse anybody. So, it kind of sucks. Proof of Valor, though, on her, not terrible. Honestly, if you had, like, Sweet Miracle on her, it'd be kind of good. It would be kind of good. A little redundant, but in those, like, fringe cases where she can get controlled after she cleanses herself, it's pretty solid. But yeah, Proof of Valor with her bulk right now keeps her alive really well. She's just a bruiser that's used against low damage control teams, and she works in those situations. So I'm going to keep her as is. Alright, next up, Infernal Kawazu. I do want to get more damage on him. This is actually a revamped version of what I had before. I think I used to be a bit tankier, but I did swap for some more damage, which is not bad. I do like his build right now. He does deal a considerable amount. He just fails to perform against Elvira. Every single time I bring him to Elvira and there's a Navy Captain Landy on the other side, he never, ever gets to proc his S2, because Navy Captain Landy never salvos in those situations. It's just really sad, but yeah. Otherwise, he's still pretty good. He's good at nuking things like through their damage limit buffs, right? Like Conqueror Lilias, Roy, like all those types of units. He's good against them too. Alright, next up we have Lone Crescent Bellona, one of my favorite units to go to against ML Landy. So Destruction set, Pen set, and of course my plus 30 Sigurd. So those are the stats. I don't think they've changed for a while, but here you go. And yeah, full damage build, almost max crit damage, really high attack. It could honestly be better if I got more Bellona imprints. But yeah, really solid unit, love using her. Next up, we have ML Ken, Resist build, Destruction build, and I don't really use him. I don't really use him, honestly. I should probably use him more, but without Christy or something to give him even more resist, I feel a little bit... He feels a little bit vulnerable sometimes, too easily controlled by the opponent. But yeah, he still has really good solo potential. Sigurd's Scythe, of course, for the healing, for the extra attack, is pretty good on him. Yeah, I just need to be not scared to use him, because he is pretty bulky. He can take a few hits. Alright, next up, Mediator Kalric. It's a good thing that we're recording this a bit late, because I just changed his build like a couple days ago. So he's on a Destruction Pen set build, right? Changed my hand guy from a support unit to a bruiser, and boy oh boy does he put in some work as a bruiser, guys. His damage is nuts. Warhorn as well, because why not? Have him still turn cycle, right? And there's not really a much better artifact for him, honestly. Turn cycling still good to get him to cut in front of your allies sometimes with their debuff, so you can cleanse them off. Still really solid. Right, next up we have Straze. He's on Benimar's Tachi. We have speed and crit. 260-ish speed, a little less than 260 speed, but good enough damage. I know his attack could be higher, but Benimar's Tachi gives that attack buff, so you never really care too much in the end. Straze, if you go up against slow teams, you just pick him. Usually you pick him with ML Leica together, and then you can just guarantee a one-shot on somebody. So that's why you can't really play too slow nowadays. Everyone plays with an opener. Even I play with a fast opener nowadays. Either Lia or C Lilias or something to prevent that situation from happening. Abyssal Yufine, so one of my favorite characters in the game. We got 2000 defense, got 16k HP, pretty solid, a little under 170 speed was pretty normal. 260 crit damage is fine, 2000 attack, pretty standard stuff. Just a really regular old lifesteal crit set Yufine. She's on Elbrus. I still like Elbrus on her way more than I do Holy Sacrifice. Holy Sac I just feel like is too gimmicky, the timing's never right. Whereas Elbrus, if you get the right counter at the right time, or hey, if you get 3 counters in a row, you just S3 on your first turn, like all my opponents do, then you're golden, you're solid. Next up, Shadow Knight Pilot. So this pilot is actually built for usually Guild Wars. You can definitely use her in RTA too. If you have Rocket Punch Gauntlet and you don't want to use Karina or don't have Karina, but somehow have a Rocket Punch Gauntlet, you can use Rocket Punch Gauntlet on her. I only have one Rocket Punch, so it stays on Karina. But in Guild Wars, sometimes I swap this Aureus over to Rocket Punch, and now she's a really good mitigation knight that can also deal damage. It's why her defense is really high, because she does scale with Rocket Punch, and she has a self-defense buff too, which is pretty good. Alright, next up we have Troublemaker Crozet. Also pretty decent unit to trap some Zeos with sometimes, because they have to hit the Troublemaker Crozet. If they don't, then the backline unit gets hit, and Troublemaker Crozet pushes up and pushes the backline unit up. So usually put your fastest unit in the back behind the Crozet, and if they hit the Crozet, then and they don't have a way to cut you, your unit that you hit in the back of Crozet gets to go. So for example, Lidica with no Guiding Light. If they hit the Lidica, Crozet pushes that Lidica back up, and then you take the turn anyway. So it's a good trap to have available in case you don't have the full Zeo trap setup that I have that I always use. Hilog Lance is really good for this. You need it, because if they hit the person in the back line, Troublemaker Crozet gains, I think, 15% combat readiness, and then you get 10% here, so 25%. With about 235, 240 speed, you're going to cut most Zeos and take the turn after, which is solid. Next up, of course, we have his EE, so you gotta have this if you're doing this setup for Troublemaker Crozet. Increase that combat readiness with the person in the back by 40% when you S3 them, which cancels out Zeo's S3 on them, which is really good. Alright, next up we have Arbiter Vildred. So this is still a counter degen RB. Unfortunately, he's not fully built. As you can see, I'm still in the progress of revamping him. He's not supposed to have the highest damage, but he is supposed to have a good chunk of HP and defense. Yeah, I need to go back to drawing board and get a bit more crit rate on him so he's capped out. I'm trying to squeeze a bit more damage out and make sure that he's bulked up correctly. I think I had to take a piece or two, that's why he looks a little weird. Moonlight Dreamblade is the go-to artifact for him, just so you can get that attack buff to make his damage a bit more consistent, because you're going to be lacking that if you're playing a counter RB. Next up, BBK. Use her a lot in Guild Wars, very good in that situation, especially with Briarwitch and Spectre Tenebria together, which we'll see later. She's on a triple resist build, so she's not on a counter at all, but she does have a good amount of resistance, as you can see, almost 180 here. And then with the Hostess of the Banquet, you get another 30%, so I'm over 200 resistance, and that's without Christy, that's without Bastion of Hope or anything else on her, which is solid. Good damage as well, almost 4k attack, 270 crit damage. She's going to be nuking pretty much everything in her path. The unfortunate thing is you can't really use her as an anti-cleave unit nowadays, because a lot of units that go first, like Ron and stuff, they just soul burn and ignore res, and you get your immortality stripped, and then you're pretty much screwed. Next up we have Closer Charles. So Closer Charles on a lifesteal bruisery build, kind of like where he is right now. He's on an immunity set too, to make sure he can't get debuffed. I don't really use him all that much. I don't use him in RTA, but I do take him out from time to time in Guild Wars for fun. And yeah, he is on Shepherd of the Hollow. Increase that evasion, increase the damage dealt, especially when he gets lower. That way you can heal up some more with his lifesteal, but hasn't really worked out too nicely for me in RTA, so we've kind of been holding back on him. I'm hoping he does get a buff, because he is, again, one of those units that was supposed to get an Awakened Potential update, but never did. Alright, next up we have Remnant Violet. So Remnant Violet here on 190 speed, a pretty decent amount of damage. Unfortunately, yet again, he's a focus unit, so Emma Politis kind of just dumpsters on him. Emma Politis also strips his evasion buff because it's a non-attack strip of 2 buffs, so good luck stacking enough buffs here on this Remnant Violet to prevent that from happening. And yeah, with Shalltear released with so much more anti-evasion stuff, Violet just seems worse and worse, but somehow in the same boat, Aiden's never impacted by anything. She's always still fine. Violet just always an inferior Aiden in most cases, which kind of sucks. Moving on, we have Briarwitch Iseria. She actually got this, which is my event piece, so that's kind of cool, my web event piece, and she's looking pretty solid. Good amount of damage, 240-something speed, and 85% effectiveness. Honestly, looking pretty good, and especially because she's on immunity set, helps out quite a bit from getting debuffed. Guiding Light as well, you can stack a lot of buffs here with her. Guiding Light with immunity, with barriers, with anti-crit and stuff. Yeah, she's going to be pretty solid. I also love her skin. Looks absolutely beautiful. Very, very glad that she got one. Very well deserved. Okay, Pirate Captain Flan. Been using her a lot less in recent metas, mostly because there's so many more units that are just kind of punish stuns, I guess. Punish bringing debuffers. Navy Captain Landy, of course, one of them. You can't stun her, sleep, or anything. And Pirate Captain Flan, naturally, not going to do too well against that. But, you know, Dragon King Shireen and stuff like that out there, too. Really punishing for Pirate Captain Flan, and people are learning how to play around her. Even a single Tywin can cleanse the bombs, and it is really, really rough. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, so Pirate Captain Flan, been seeing very, very much decrease in play, and in the situations where she would be fantastic, she always gets post-banned. So yeah, that's the situation of her, unfortunately. Sea Phantom Politis, though, 297 speed, like my second fastest unit, I think, in my account. So she's on some offset pieces, as you can see. They're decent pieces, but they're on weird sets like Resist and Lifesteal. And she is currently on Unseen Observer, so when she uses her non-attack skill, 1, it helps her turn cycle, and 2, we get some souls, which is nice for playing a bit more aggressively. She has a little bit of effectiveness, not too much. Normally I do imprint concentration, imprint release. She doesn't need the concentration because 17k HP is already a decent chunk. Next up, we got the Great Ainz with 20k health, almost 1900 defense, 200 speed, a good mix of effectiveness and resistance. Now, his artifact here gives 20 effectiveness, so he has about 105 effectiveness here and 40 resist, so he has about you know, 205 resistance. It's pretty solid. We got him on a resist set and a speed set. So he's one of those units that can actually put the effectiveness and effect res mixed pieces to pretty good use. But yeah, Ein's pretty fun unit. Wish he ignored res on his S3 and didn't get 15%ed, but here we are, still getting 15%ed in 2024. Fantastic. All right, next up we have all these units got their gear. They're still works in progress, and I didn't really use them all too much last season. Champ Z I used a couple seasons ago, but last season it was too rough for him. Requiem Rowana, so yeah, she got a buff, and she's actually pretty good. I don't use her in RTA really, because I can't contest speed, but she is really strong in Guild Wars for me too, in Arena as well. The fact that she can strip immunity now, and look at that, 260 effectiveness, how can you even win against that? You can easily hit 300, and a lot of people do, like dedicated cleavers, 100% do that. You can reset things like DJBs and all that other stuff, easy peasy, no problem. We got Taga Hell's Ancient Book on her because she's a mage, you know, just bring Zeo in her and you have 40 souls, you guaranteed to go first twice with Zeo and her. How do you even lose, right? How do you even lose? She also gets effectiveness here if you imprint Concentrator, so you can easily get to like 350 effectiveness, honestly, and it's quite insane. Alright, next up, Spectre Tenebria. So I haven't changed her gear in quite a while. I still love Lifesteal build because when you pick Spectre, people tend to pick Bellion still, and Bellion loses to Lifesteal Spectre because you have enough, unless of course they keep dual attacking or counter attacking or extra attacking. But yeah, you tend to have enough sustain that you get to keep yourself alive, and mine's pretty bulky too. Of course you bring Book. I know some people bring like Warhorn or Chatty on her, but it's pretty solid, this amount of damage and this amount of bulk. The speed's a little low, but it comes with the set. Normally if you go Lifesteal, you're about 280, 180, and at tops you're about like 190, maybe 200 if you have insane gear. Alright, next up we have Zeo. So Zeo here, 260 speed, we have speed set and broken set, so he really just needs the effectiveness here, 100 effectiveness, a little bit of damage, 260 speed. I don't really use him all that much, but when I do, I need Book on him so that I can soul burn my other units that are going after him. He's a good little setup for cleave and aggro, obviously, because everyone uses him for that. But yeah, personally, I don't really play that way very often, so I do have him geared though, just in case I do need him. Next up, DDR. DDR here is, well, 260 speed, pretty solid. Most people now have effect res on him instead of effectiveness, which I can understand. I just don't have that, so we're just sticking with effectiveness for now, and we're just letting it go. I have too many units who want effect resistance, so yeah, we just have to make this work, right? Wondrous Potion Vial on him, still pretty solid. Again, people go effect res, and I think people are going what is it called? Soul Consolation on him, so that when people use non-attack skills, DDR doesn't get affected. He resists all the debuffs and he pushes himself up, which is pretty cool. Again, I just can't pull that off, so it's just unfortunate. I can give himself more effectiveness here, so there you go. 150 effectiveness normally, but sometimes when I want to support the team, I just give more HP, because 5.4% to 3 other units is a pretty noticeable amount. But yeah, that's pretty much all the units that I use. Those are all the starred ones at the very least. Everyone else is stuff that, like, for PvE or, like, really dumb stuff on the side that I do. But yeah, with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, this account overview has helped you in building some of your own units. I love providing references for you guys to take a look at, and so that is exactly what this is for. With that being said though, I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.